Whether you're a diehard sports fan, a hopeless romantic, or a comedy aficionado, the Xfinity 10G network was made for streaming it all. Worry less about buffering when streaming your favorite shows, movies, or live sports and enjoy a better way to watch. Xfinity gives you a reliable connection for streaming plus all the entertainment you love all in one place. Fear not, because now you can finally sit back, relax, and stream your favorite entertainment and sports like never before with the Xfinity 10G network.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
This is Candace from Edmonton, Alberta. If you go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, you can get exclusive podcasts, videos, and more. Seriously, it's bananas. Come join us.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the original true crime review podcast about other podcasts that digs into true crime, pop culture, and of course, TV. And this week, it's racked up Emmys, Peabodys, Golden Globes. Does season 3 of Killing Eve maintain the same quality? Plus, a documentary that traces the fallout from abolition up to the modern disparities in the criminal justice system. We're talking about Netflix's newly repopular The 13th. Join me to get that done and more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, and Donald Hall lookalike, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Nobody knows the former poet laureate of the United States.
You look like a wild man?
Just say I look like a wild man. I look like one of those Alaska bushmen that Laura's husband loves to watch on TV.
You look like Captain Caveman from those old 1970s cartoons.
Caveman!
I saw Donald Hall read some very frankly sexual poetry.
Really?
At UNH one night, yeah.
I can do that. Ready? Mm-hmm. There was a young lady from Nantucket. No, there was a young man from Nantucket. Whose was so long he could suck it.
Oh, God!
He said with a grin as he wiped off his chin, if my ear was a
Nice. Hot. Henry, add a lot of bleep to that poem. Just say it. Leave it in. Bleep it.
Oh, my God.
Bleep it. Bleep it. Bleep it.
You have to, it had to rhyme with that was the word he used quite a bit in his poetry.
Oh, okay.
Jesus Christ. Lots of bleeps to start this podcast. Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, certified cat lady, and beaver reliever friend, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello, that's me. Yes.
We'll follow up on that in just a second.
Yes.
And finally, our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, host of the hit Strange Arrivals podcast, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Jumbo Rebecca.
Jumbo.
Now, Laura, I hear we have some follow-up from last week's conversation about your friend and pest control expert, Mary Weaver, the beaver reliever, as we came to talk about her in the podcast. But I think her business name is what? Actually, Mary Weaver Pest Reliever?
Yes, Mary Weaver, the pest reliever.
But she would do beaver, so she'd be a beaver reliever.
Exactly. So what happened with Mary Weaver? Did she listen to the podcast and she hates us all now?
She didn't listen to the podcast, but she and I are going to be taping tomorrow. So actually, that would be a few days behind when this podcast is dropping for a special episode of Leave It to Bricker, where we can get to the bottom of the origins of her business marketing plan.
Nice.
And also anything about the chipmunk apocalypse, because they are everywhere. But more importantly, Rebecca, you have received some correspondence from somebody representing Mary Weaver. Yes.
Oh, no.
And it says, "Dear Rebecca, please refrain from further mention of my client, Mary Weaver. Sincerely, Dick Dreyer, client satisfier."
Where did I receive this correspondence, Laura?
You received it on Twitter, actually.
Okay. Whew. So it wasn't a real cease and
Harry
desist.
Flanders, attorney who slanders.
No, I don't know the person's real name, but their Twitter handle is Real10to1.
Nice.
And they're from Tennessee. Yeah.
All right, so I can just like big sigh of relief. It's not like
Thanks, 10 and 1.
Yeah.
That's probably 10 with 2 N's, right? Tennessee? Yeah.
So I'll get more information, and anybody that's in Patreon can hear that next week and learn all about the life of Mary Weaver.
All right, we have a lot to talk about this week. Should we just get it started?
Let's do it.
Leading off.
What are you doing?
Working out how I'd kill you.
I thought killing wasn't really your thing at the moment.
You want to test that theory?
You're only as good as your last. Go on, tell me. How would you do it?
I don't know yet, but it would definitely involve the tiny chair.
AMC and BBC America have just finished season 3 of their highly acclaimed and much-loved comic espionage drama, Killing Eve. We see that Eve has survived her bullet wound, but her life is now in ruins. She wants to get back into the spy game to investigate the death of her friend.
I think you could do with people or something. You don't seem very...
No, Kenny, I'm fine.
I know. You just don't seem very happy. That's all.
Who says I want to be happy?
Meanwhile, Villanelle is working with a new handler, but is contemplating whether she wants to continue her life as an assassin for the mysterious group known only as the 12.
You're the best I ever trained. You're destined for greatness. It's true. You have a brilliant career ahead of you, Oksana.
Do you think I'm stupid?
Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer return as the rivals driven by equal measures of dangerous obsession and fatal attraction. Can Eve root out the spies? And what will happen when she finally crosses paths with Villanelle? Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about plot points from Killing Eve Season 3, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes. Laura Bricker, Killing Eve, still one of your favorite shows, yes or no?
Yes, it definitely is. I think, this season wasn't as dramatic with the plot as past seasons, but it still got all of the quirkiness that you've come to expect. And honestly, how can you say anything about death being as much fun as it is in the show? I mean, I never thought I would be like, yeah, somebody got killed and it was super funny. But that's how I feel when I watch the show.
You mean like in the episode where she just walks up to the lady in the ladder and the store and just pushes it? After having this whole complicated build up that there's going to be some sort of violent stabbing thing, and it's just boop. And that's that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, actually, I really appreciated the piano tuning fork death in this season.
Yeah. Who knew?
I mean, I was like, wow, that was good aim. But then she's like, oh no, there's somebody else here. And it was the nanny with the baby. Yeah. And she's like, you really like that baby, huh? It's not even yours. And then she's like, boom.
Yeah.
You're dead. And then she takes the baby.
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Now, Toby, you wrote a note and you said these prestige shows now seem to have seasons where they have one virtuoso episode. What to you was the one virtuoso episode in season 3 of Killing Eve?
I think it was episode 4, which is the one where it doesn't really focus on just one character, but it has everybody's kind of doing different things, and then they intersect. And a couple times you see the same scene from different perspectives. And so I kind of thought that episode kind of stood out in the quality of its writing and its plotting. And it just kind of reminded me, Castle Rock, there was that episode about dementia, which I thought really stood out. Mm-hmm. Homecoming, there was the second to last episode where there's that really long scene where it's going to end up with Janelle Monáe semi-conscious in a boat. That I thought was sort of a virtuoso thing. And I think what made Watchmen so great is 75% of their episodes were like that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought it was interesting that there are these shows that for whatever reason are this one episode is we're just going to show our stuff, and then the rest of the time will be good or okay or whatever. But it's almost sort of to show what we could do. And it's just a little bit frustrating that the rest of it doesn't live up to that standard. But I thought that episode was particularly striking.
I thought that episode was great. And I disagree with you that the rest of it doesn't live up to it, because I thought some other episodes were also great. And Kevin, I don't know how you feel about the episode that I loved the most this season. I loved the Russia episode.
You always laugh at things that aren't funny.
Clean your face.
Can you do it?
You're not a child.
I want to feel like one. Please. Can you do it?
I loved it, loved it, loved it. I loved everything about it. It was like a quirky Coen Brothers film. The origin story of Villanelle is kind of laid out in a way that's clever. Her sociopathy or whatever it is that she's got going on is kind of laid out in a way that's clever. What did you think of, the episode Toby talked about? More important, Kevin, what did you think of that Russia episode?
Well, at first, I was not excited to see that's what it was going to be.
Yeah.
You could tell right away because when you looked at the credits, Sandra Oh was not listed.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, it's going to be, the entire thing's going to be in Russia. And in season 1, when they made this detour to a Russian prison, it kind of derailed that whole, the momentum of that season. That was the low point for me in that one. So I was thinking, this isn't great. I think the episode in and of itself, the story was very entertaining. Who knew how big Elton John is in Russia, you know?
At least in that house.
To the extent that it serves the larger purpose of the narrative about she's torn about whether or not she wants to be a regular person and know about her family and get out of the assassin business. Does it resolve anything really for the audience other than sort of took a shot? Okay, gonna kill your mom. It wasn't my favorite part of the season, but it didn't tank it like I was afraid.
All right, here's why it was great.
I know you loved it.
I loved it. I love the festival scene.
Yeah, throwing the dung.
The dung contest.
And you win a fan. So when the shit hits the fan, right?
Love that. I loved all the stuff with the brother. I loved the fact that this was the first...
The little brother?
Yeah.
The
one who lived... No. I love the one who lived in the barn. I love them both brothers. But I loved the whole idea that, this was a killing that was hard for her. Mm-hmm. And, we've never seen that before. We've seen her do other things.
Which killing was hard for her?
Of her mother.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't feel like it was hard for her.
In the aftermath of it, definitely seemed like she was not... it was a choice that she made rather than it being an assignment that she had, right?
Yeah.
Which was the first time we saw her do something like that for that reason, because she made a choice.
Right.
I don't know. I found it affecting.
Well,
I think it has to do with the fact that, let's just be real, Jodie Comer is a baller actress.
Yeah.
This would not work without her, right?
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing that I feel like is different now than, say, in season 1. We kind of love Villanelle.
The good ones, I pickle. The bad ones, you don't know them.
This has been great, guys!
Really? Thanks for the good time.
She's quirky and unpredictable, and we kind of delight in her wickedness, but she isn't scary like she was in season 1. You remember there was one episode, it ends with Sandra Oh and some of the other folks from The Office. They were out in the woods.
She was stalking them.
She was stalking, coming at them in the woods.
Yeah, like a zombie.
And that was so freaking scary.
Yeah.
Even though she's a cold-blooded assassin, we're not afraid of her anymore.
Yeah.
That's fine, but that's different. That's a difference in the way we perceive her character.
Yeah. Now, we do get some new characters in this season. The amazingly conceived Dasha, former champion gymnast from Russia, turned handler. And we also get Caroline's daughter, who has a mystifying relationship with her mother. Of course, Caroline's daughter was in Game of Thrones playing, what was that character's name?
She was
the one who, Theon
Greyjoy.
Theon's sister.
Theon's sister. Oh, I hate that I know her name.
Ms. Greyjoy.
This is what happens when you haven't read the books and you've only watched the TV show. You forget all those stupid names. Yeah. Laura, what did you think of the introduction of the new characters this season?
I thought it was great that we got these new characters because we have these really established characters that, are very solid and very strong. And they all have their sort of, nuanced quirkiness and everything going on. But now we've got Dasha, who she's pretty badass. If you were talking about thinking that Villanelle is a cold-blooded killer, Dasha doesn't seem to have any bone of sympathy in her body. But it also, I thought, was interesting to hear a little bit more of the origin story of Villanelle through Dasha, as she's talking about how she made her and what she was like when she came to her. And then, Caroline's daughter, that character was just kind of maddening. I just felt like she was kind of clueless. I felt a lot of time like she got drawn in by Constantine and his sort of romantic advances, which was really a ploy. But then I did feel sympathy for her when Caroline, reveals that she wasn't her favorite, that you were your father's and Kenny was mine. And that was the situation. And so it made it very clear that there was a much more complicated relationship there. So, she was clueless, but I'll cut her some slack when you hear the whole backstory.
But who was the father?
Yeah, I know. Was she kissing her own father? That's what I wanted to know. I was like, oh boy.
Was it Constantine?
That's what I wondered.
So the thing with Caroline and her daughter, Toby, I'm curious to know what you think of that, because Laura found her frustrating, infuriating. I actually felt like the daughter was the only person in this whole series who was behaving like a normal person. Hey, Mom, you're not okay. Hey, Mom, please talk to me. Hey, Mom, I just want to have a normal... And the freezing out stuff I found so painful and weird. I don't know, Toby, what did you think of that whole familial dynamic?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought it was funny. She's both the only sort of normal person, and then she's also more of a sort of get in touch with your feelings type of normal person. You know, it's a little bit of a commentary on like these psychotics who are the rest of the cast, basically. Mm-hmm. Like nobody else is normal at all.
Toby, you don't call a psychopath a psychopath. It upsets them.
From the comfort of my guest room, I feel safe.
So, Kevin, another thing that you have to do when you're going to have multiple seasons of a series and a character is no longer, quote, useful to advance the plot, sometimes you got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
They dispatched with Nico.
Yeah, we thought he was dead.
In a way that was clever, advanced the plot, but also made it very clear, like, he's not coming back, right?
Well,
piss off forever.
Piss off forever. He can cause complications, which is what you want from a character when you're writing them. But let's face it, Nico was sort of the obstacle for Eve to fully realize her complicated feelings for Villanelle. I don't know the extent that we have to define the relationship. This was sort of something we talked about before, especially in season 1. Halfway through, all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute, does she have romantic feelings for her?
Do you want to be like that? Not anymore. Why not? We never make it that long. We consume each other before we got old. That sounds kind of nice.
Because she has a husband and you just, like, all of a sudden don't automatically go there.
Right.
Because honestly, there aren't a lot of cat and mouse setups where they're two females. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's a guy and a gal and they look sexy together and they're making eyes.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yes, you know, or what's your favorite thing?
Thomas Crown Affair.
Thomas Crown Affair, right, that kind of thing. Yeah. So we'd rarely have two female leads.
Right.
And so it was very subtextual. And then in the second season, it was no longer subtextual, it was textual.
Right.
That they are attracted to one another in addition to hating one another and being jealous of one another's lives.
Right.
But sort of the only thing that sort of kept her from running away when they're in Rome was the fact that she's married to Nico and she has this other life. If you get rid of Nico as a character, you remove that obstacle for the writers to make the two of them get together.
Can I show you something that's going to blow your mind?
Show me.
Nico, the character, has that big goofy mustache.
Right.
Do you want to see what the actor who plays Nico looks like?
I think it's perfect for a podcast.
Look how hot this guy is.
Oh, my God. I'm going to cut my mustache off. I'm going clean shaven. I thought I was rugged.
What do you think happened to that poor woman that Villanelle was marrying at the beginning of this season?
Oh.
That was awesome.
I actually had a note about that. I was like, did I miss her getting killed or something? Or did she just vanish?
I mean, was that a fantasy? Was it even real?
It was real. She just walked out on the wedding.
Yeah, and when Dasha walks in, she's like, it's my special day.
It's my special day.
This is my special day.
Right, I assumed it was like her mother.
Yeah.
Because we find out later, it literally isn't. But
right.
Yeah.
I was thinking, that would be a nice twist that her mother is also an assassin. But
Toby, one thing that I liked this season, which, you have to, again, you can't go back to the places you've been when you sort of torch them for use of the plot. So, like, we know their little, like, secret office was no longer in commission. We know that Kenny had moved on and then died. So they basically sort of move the investigative operation now to this like very Euro crime setting that we've seen in a million other European crime things, which is the investigative journalism office. Where everyone is just like, it was like an environmental journalism publication that then she then hijacked, and they were like looking into this international assassin ring. Toby, that seems like the kind of place that you could work. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. That could be my next stop. This podcasting thing doesn't work out.
It hasn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Toby, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, I mean, Killing Eve is a very visual show. I mean, all shows are visual, but I think Killing Eve is an especially visual show. Between, the way that their faces are very exaggerated, the settings are very exaggerated. One of the most hallmark things of Killing Eve's, visual nature is the costuming.
Yeah.
Toby, do you think that Villanelle showing up on a Scottish golf course wearing a
awesome.
full outfit, tartan and green feathers? I mean, this is how you know Jodie Comer's a good actress, right? Because she can just walk around in those clothes and you can imagine seeing her and just being like, oh, look what that lady's wearing, and having it not be astonishing.
Talk me through your outfit.
I was trained to wear clothes that allow a full range of movement.
So weird. I was trained to look devastating. obvious.
The thing about that outfit is that American guy who comes and helps him out doesn't seem to be that bewildered by it. Like, I don't golf, but if I did, and some woman who was dressed like that was asking me for something, I don't know what I would do.
Oh, you do it.
And I'm thinking about when they go to the dance class or whatever it is, and she's wearing like this pantsuit that looks like it was made out of some like
wallpaper,
really, like expensive rug or something. This is what I really like about the show. I think it's got like a very unique feel, pretty consistently visually, and then less consistently through the story. And that's what I think the strong stuff is when they kind of stick to what's original about it. I find this whole series a little frustrating because there's some parts of it I really, really like. And then there are parts of it that I think they feel like they have to do sort of normal plot type stuff to get you from point A to point B. That's what keeps me from like really, really liking it and just sort of liking a lot of parts of it.
Kevin, I know you love the costuming on the show.
I do. It's great. So look, a lot of times, and we've seen this a million times in TV shows and movies, we have one character who is like outrageously dressed. There's like fashionista or whatever. And for the writers go, that is the extent of the character development, that they wear fancy clothes, flashy or whatever. Here, when Villanelle wears these things, whether it is, a child's ballerina outfit or the pajamas she pulls out of the trunk from when she stowed away in the car in season 2.
Yep, or the couture dress she wears in the streets of Barcelona in the episode.
Anything, any of it, it just suits her character. Instead of the clothes wearing the character, this character wears the clothes.
Right.
The costuming is done very well here. It isn't gratuitous. It really enhances the character for once.
Speaking of character,
and I think they're selling the fashion. Right? Wasn't there a kitschy thing on the side, which was there was an app inspired by the fashions of this show. So if you want to go golfing in that green tartan Muppet shoulder thing that she was wearing, you could do that.
I just want a bunch of Eves black turtlenecks. That's more my deal.
The turtleneck. Yes,
yeah. Laura, I know that you have now fallen deeply in love with the actor Kim Bodnia.
Oh, yes.
Who plays Constantine. Do you want to tell our audience why you love him so much?
Well, I developed this love while watching, now I'm on season 4 of Bron,
The Bridge,
also known as Chai TT. But anyway, and I love his facial expressions, both in that show and this show, and the way he laughs is hysterical to me.
Then you taught me how to swear in Russian.
I did.
Mudak.
So in the Bridge, whenever Saga does something, he's like, ah! He'll do that funny laugh. And he does the same thing in this show. And I'm just I don't know, it's sort of infectious when you watch it.
In the after show this week, Laura, you're in season 4 of The Bridge.
Yes.
Can we please just talk about it a little bit in the after show, where you are, how you're feeling? Because I really need to catch up with you on that. And the after show seems like a good place to do it.
You got it.
Yes.
So just a quick question for you guys before we wrap up. The final scene, Killing Eve, it kind of ends in a weird place. I thought it felt like the end of the series. Was I the only person who felt like maybe the end of the series, Kevin?
I mean, you could end it there. It'd be fine. But the message is still, I can't quit you. That's where we are. I mean, the show is always about how are these two going to get together, right? Every season, it's their rivals and whatnot, but it's essentially when and how are they going to cross paths?
But the idea that there's going to be this romantic ending for the two of them, it's impossible.
Well, look they've tried it in 2 other seasons.
Yeah.
At the end of season 1, Eve stabs her. At the end of season 2, Villanelle shoots her in the back.
Yeah.
So on season 3, where they're on, I guess it's London Bridge, and they get to the middle and they go back to back.
I think it was the Tower Bridge.
Tower Bridge? Yeah, okay.
Now turn around and face the other way.
What?
I'll turn this way.
Have you turned?
Can't see you.
Now what?
Now we'll walk, and we never look back.
But I...
Don't turn. Just walk.
I think it leaves the door open for a season 4.
Toby has a very literary take on this that I want to hear. Go ahead, Toby.
I assume it's intentional, that it's a play on the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, where Eurydice gets bit by a snake and dies and goes to, Tartarus, hell. And Orpheus is, this great musician, and he goes down and sort of charms Hades and says, okay, you can have Eurydice back. You can lead her out to the world, but you can't turn around. Like if you turn around, she comes back. And so he almost gets out there and he turns around and she's brought back. And that seems to be what's set up, and that, Sandra Oh doesn't want to be in the life anymore. And so Villanelle says, okay, well, walk away and just don't turn around. And then she does. And then that's when you know she's being dragged back into the life.
What did you think, Laura, about the ending of the season?
So at first, I was thinking, oh, this is it. This is the end of the series. But then when we have that part where they turn around at the last minute, I did feel like it was setting it up for season 4. And I think season 4 is going to be Eve helping Villanelle escape, and the two of them are going to go on the lam together.
I just don't know where they would go. I don't know where they would go. I mean, even Carolyn doesn't want Villanelle working for her. It's so sad.
Hang out with Brad Pitt. Drive a car over a cliff.
Going with Brad Pitt over to the Property Brothers on HGTV. Toby doesn't know what I'm talking about, but it happened. Let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know. Should they check out Killing Eve Season 3? It's on demand, originally aired on AMC and BBC America. Should you check out Killing Eve Season 3? Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up. This show is a fun show, despite the fact that a lot of people are getting killed. It's got a great cast. It's quirky, it's funny, it's smart, and it's seriously one of my favorites. Whenever there's a new season, it's something I look forward to.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Killing Eve Season 3?
I give it a thumbs up. Like I said, I think it's pretty inconsistent, but I think the good parts are really, really good, and the bad parts are just kind of normal. And that adds up to a thumbs up.
What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm a thumbs up. I understand that the critics did not like Season 3 because it wasn't as good as Season 1, and Season 2 didn't have the same spark. Phoebe Waller-Bridge was not really a participant other than just cashing the check, and so I still really liked it. I thought it was better than Season 2. I will tell you that my 80-year-old father somehow found Season 1 of Killing Eve, and I had to teach him how to use the on-demand so he could go back and watch the rest of them, and he loves it.
Yeah.
And I told him, Dad, yeah, this was something we reviewed. We all really like it. It's a special show. It still is.
Charby's watching Killing Eve?
Yeah.
Charby!
I love it.
Yeah, I actually thought it was better than Season 2 as well. I thought it was a lot better than Season 2. I thought it's really difficult to do a third season of a show where the cliffhangers for Season 1 and Season 2 are essentially kind of the same. The betrayal, the sort of does the person live or die, whatever. Season 3 was more low-key, and for me, it was a lot stronger because it depended more on the really earnest performances of all these incredible actors. Sandra Oh is wonderful. Jodie Comer, mwah. Can't say enough good things about her. Big thumbs up for me for Killing Eve Season 3. I will tell you, critics, you are wrong about this one. We're right, you're wrong. All right, Kevin, before we move on, we have some business to attend to.
Do we?
What do we have going on right now on our Patreon? We have the Crime Writers on After Show, and
right.
We're going to talk about Laura's experience watching The Bridge.
Yes, we have coming up very shortly a new edition of Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker,
in which she's going to be talking to Mary Weaver.
Beaver Reliever.
That's right.
Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast will be out shortly. He had a group of fantastic folks on talking about The Bling Ring.
Yes.
And a very special event happening on Crowdcast.
Okay.
On Friday, you can celebrate my 50th birthday with me.
You.
Yeah.
Via video.
We're going to have our patrons come on. You can join me on the screen. You can chat. You can send me virtual gifts. You don't really just say like happy birthday. It's all right.
Yeah.
You don't have to send a card. You can if you want to.
That's right.
But we're going to have drinks and toasts and have a lot of fun and celebrate.
Does it mean I have to go to this one?
You don't have to.
No, I'm going to go.
You can't fit on the screen, Rebecca. I mean, our heads are just going to,
I'll just sit next to you and occasionally turn the camera over and I'll just be,
That's fine.
Yes.
So you get all that by going to patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
Kevin, do we have any Patron Saints of the Week this week?
Yes, our Patreon patron saints are Kate Carson and Bliss Peterson. Bless you.
I should also mention on our Patreon after show this week, I'm going to tell Toby and Laura the story of the stupidest fight I have ever gotten into on Facebook.
Oh, good.
I cannot wait to tell them about it.
Oh, good.
Does this have to do with quote unquote vandalism?
It does.
Okay.
It's really good. Kevin and I are going to get divorced soon because I keep getting in these very stupid fights on my community's.
One of us going to the morgue.
One of my town's Facebook pages. I just keep getting these crazy fights. I've just had enough. I've had enough.
Why do you care?
Oh, we'll talk about it on the after show, Toby. We'll talk about it.
Speaking of why do you care, and time is up. Let's get to our next thing.
Let's move on, shall we?
The 13th Amendment to the Constitution makes it unconstitutional for someone to be held as a slave. In other words, it grants freedom to all Americans. There are exceptions, including criminals.
How did America get to where it is today? A nation with 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prisoners. The documentary, The 13th, which gets its name from the amendment that ended slavery, makes the case that the current status of police brutality and mass incarceration can be traced back to white opposition to abolition.
One of the things that people have to bear in mind is that when we think about slavery, it was an economic system, and the demise of slavery at the end of the Civil War left the Southern economy in tatters. And so this presented a big question. There are 4 million people who were formerly property, and they were formerly kind of the integral part of the economic production system in the South. And now those people are free.
Released in 2016, the Netflix doc is timely and trending, touching on the politics, policies, financial influencers, and systematic racism which causes the unequal application of justice in America. The historical retrospective is also a snapshot of the issues, which becomes heartbreaking when you realize the state of the world has only gotten worse since the documentary was released. We're going to be talking about plot points for the 13th, so to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our reviews. Lara Bricker, this documentary, I think, is a great package. So if you have a person that comes up to you in this moment when, you are trying to explain why, defund the police is a thing, and why Black Lives Matter is a thing, and why all lives matter shouldn't be a thing. And you have an earnest white person come to you and say where can I go? What can I read? What can I do? Would you not tell them to immediately stream The 13th on Netflix, Lara Bricker?
Yes, I would, Rebecca Lavoie. I just found this very thorough, very timely, had a lot of really great voices telling the story, and it really laid it out in a way that was easy to follow and really easy to understand, and for me became very rage-inducing the longer it went on. But the timeliness, when they're talking about what is it going to take to see some sort of sustained momentum. And this was a few years ago that this came out. And they were saying, well, now that things are videotaped and you're going to see, it's going to be something that's videotaped that is going to be the thing that really catapults this into a movement that continues on a different level. So to me, it's not only timely, but it was sort of just really insightful in the way that very accurately tracking how things were going to progress in this area.
No, I don't actually think it was prescient or anything, Lara, because this was going on, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. It's just something that I think that, the moment that we're in has now reached new heights. And that is why this is a great moment to watch this. Toby, one of the things that I think people do not understand when people talk about the police as not necessarily an agent for good, and they talk about the militarization of the police, and they talk about sort of the role of the police in the criminal justice system and the uneven application of the law in different communities, I really don't think most people know the origins of the police in America, the origins of the police as the slave police, as controlling renegade, the scare quotes, Black people and keeping them in control. This is the origin story of policing in America. I don't think people actually know that. What do you think, Toby?
No, I agree. I think how blatant and open some of the aspects of systemic racism would surprise people. That when you trace things back and you think you have this insight now as to these things that were going on, but it was never really that hidden. If you follow the history, it's just right there the whole time. But a lot of the stuff that we talk about now, again, systemic racism, it was conceived that way. And then it was sort of absorbed into society as something that was sort of accepted as being sort of the normal way things are. And it sort of, especially with the police, lost that connection with, oppression, specifically oppressing Black people. But that's always been a part of it.
It is the institution that is wrong and should not exist in the way that it exists. At least that is what this movement is trying to point out. And that's what this documentary points a very clear picture of, right, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when they lay it out like this, the case is very credible that the system's foundations were built on slavery, and it's demonstrated how it's gone from A to B to C. And, we've heard this a lot. The system isn't broken. The system was built this way.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it that way and you look at it and say, wow, I've been looking at this wrong for a long time.
Laura Bricker, the history that we learn in the 13th is also political history. We see in the mid-20th century how Republicans and Democrats sort of passed this wand back and forth. Republicans in private, not really in private because there are recordings of it, talk about how they're going to use race and scare tactics and sort of drum up the era of slavery to frighten people to get laws passed that benefited them. And then they pass the wand to Democrats when they feel like they have to go to the middle and do the same thing. What did you think of that political history as it's laid out in the 13th?
It was interesting because, I did feel like I was fairly well informed going in, but there was a lot that I learned watching this. And starting with Nixon and Reagan and the war on drugs, and you're seeing this like really tough on crime attitude. We see Nancy Reagan out there with her Just Say No campaign. And then at the same time, you see this surging prison population and this feeling and this spin in the media and this spin in the public that this is making us safer because, and the way that they are portraying Blacks in prison as animals and like monsters. So you're seeing it from that side. But what I was surprised by, I guess I don't know why I've blocked this out, is that the Democrats were also, for a period of time, equally tough on crime. And, we see Bill Clinton and we see this 3 strikes you're out, mandatory minimums.
Super predators.
Those type of things were just really difficult. And, things that I still experienced when I was doing defense work with some of these mandatory minimums and, judges not having any discretion in cases where there were circumstances at play that might make it, reasonable not to give somebody that sentence. So the documentary what did very effectively was when they were showing just the graphics and the numbers between different decades and like in 5-year increments with the prison population that coincided with these changes in laws. So
now this is not going to be a political statement. This is a factual statement that I'm sure some of our listeners might view as a political statement. And for our listeners who are tempted to write to me and say that I am being biased or being political right now, this is not a political statement. This is a fact. The fact is that Republicans and conservatives in the mid-20th century planned to use fear and the suppression of Black people as a political tactic.
Announced as part of a political strategy by Richard Nixon, and which morphed into a literal war by Ronald Reagan, turning to something that began to feel nearly genocidal.
And it is a fact that the Democratic Party had to come toward that in order to maintain any kind of power and be able to get whatever the agenda of Democrats done is. But the other thing that we see in this documentary, Toby, is we actually get some of those other voices in here. Lee Atwater, Grover Norquist, Newt Gingrich. We have these interviews. We have the ALEC interview. This is not political to make the statement. This is fact. And you have people on the other side of the aisle from the Democrats confirming that in this documentary with no...
nonpartisan.
What do you think of that, Toby, that they were able to sort of represent those voices in this documentary?
I think just about everybody who is political in this documentary who is actually talking on camera to them is being self-serving in the best way they possibly can be. One of the things that's just insane making about the Clintons and that whole sort of third way centrist Democrat thing That was their theory. I don't know if that's actually true. I think they thought that they had to do that. I don't know that that's actually accurate.
Right.
I thought all these guys, like, it's pretty rich seeing Newt Gingrich, like, suddenly trying to feel black pain.
Yeah.
I mean, Grover Norquist is still Grover Norquist.
Yeah, unapologetically so.
Kind of a douche.
Like, it's all the liberals' fault.
Liberals that announced that it was mean to pick on a murderer and a rapist lose all credibility on this discussion. They just lose it.
But Paul Weyrich was, he wasn't talking to them as documentarians. I mean, it's him talking in archival footage, but basically saying we need to keep people from voting.
Right.
Like, the fewer people vote, the more we win.
Right.
And, you have Lee Atwater talking about how, racialized language in politics had to change. And the way you appeal to the sort of quote unquote white working class voter that everybody talks about is by sort of the dog whistle thing about having policies that will benefit white people and hurt black people. And I think they really nailed that Alec guy.
What ultimately happened is our board looked at the issues that Alec worked on and decided that we don't do social issues. We are focused on economic issues. We jettisoned basically almost all of our legislation that was pre-2007. So we basically fresh slate going forward, a fresh start going forward.
And it's like, well, it's funny. We just heard Lee Atwater saying that's, that's the code, right?
Right.
The idea that economic issues don't have like a large racial component is ludicrous.
But this is, again, I want to reiterate to our listeners, if you have not seen the 13th, and you think we are talking about something that is our political opinion, it's not. This is documented American history, and we have people on the right side of the aisle on tape talking about how these are strategies that are used to
the Southern
win.
strategy.
But they're
Nixon
used to
Southern
win,
strategy.
and they're also used to make money,
Right.
and they're also used to scare white people, and they're
Right.
also used to. It's not opinion to say that is the tactic. That is the tactic.
If it makes Republicans feel better, they should remember that before the 60s, it was the Democrats that had bad people. They just happened to, after Johnson, just kind of switch parties. So, but, there was a thing about Alec. It reminds me, a lot of people assume that the political positions follow the money when it comes to lobbyists. It's more often true that the money follows the positions. There's somebody who's pro-life or whatever. You know who the players are. The money ends up going that way. I'm not trying to say don't blame the lobbyists and the corporations. They didn't just go to the store and buy a vote. It's really the politicians.
Well, it's really funny. The thing about Alec that whole section was so interesting to me is, I work in a newsroom. We cover a lot of state house politics. So many state bills, so many are copied and pasted, not just from Alec, but from other national lobbying
No, that's
groups.
what Alec does.
But so many other bills, even bills that seem like on the surface like good ideas. There's a bill called Marcy's Law that like this billionaire from California has been trying to pass in every single state. It has to do with his sister who was murdered. It's a criminal justice bill that increases, quote, rights of victims, but it's problematic. Like states that have passed it have had to repeal it for all sorts of privacy reasons and other reasons. But like it is a branded bill that is copied and pasted. And it's really interesting. I would encourage anybody who's interested in this kind of thing, if a bill ever comes up from a local politician, maybe a state house rep or something that just seems like kind of sophisticated, copy the text, paste it into Google search, and you'd be amazed at places you'll see it show up.
We're kind of getting in the weeds here on this. But the reason it's part of the documentary is because then it's talking about the privatized prison system.
Yes.
And now as they try to get out of that.
The privatized parole.
Parole and bail. Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong? Laura, what do you think of Alec? Criminal justice, using, that template of, quote unquote reform backed by huge corporations that have a stake in keeping things as they are, including the kinds of companies that like charge inmates and their families $1 million for phone calls, food service companies to prisons, that kind of thing. What did you think of this whole part of the documentary?
This is a part where my rage really started to hit the Richter scale. I hadn't heard about Alex, so I actually went and did some reading when I was finished watching this documentary. But it made me so angry, the control that this entity was having over the criminal justice system in a way that was really affecting vulnerable people, poor people, Black people, and in a way that was designed to continue the trends that we were seeing that was making it inequitable for people in the criminal justice system. And I was like loving that one guy, the guy who confronted the man who came in with the ALEC bill. And he's like, so is this your bill? And he's like, oh, yes, but. And he's like, really? Because right here, it's got this logo on the top of it. And I was like,
earlier
yes.
draft.
I was like, I love you right now. But, when I was reading about Alex, it was like back in like 2012, 2013, there was a lot of media coverage of what was happening with this organization and not so much since. So I'm glad that this documentary has sort of brought it out into the light again.
All right. Well, I think we should do what we do. Let our listeners know, should they check out The 13th on Netflix? It came out a few years ago, but it is trending once again. Laura Bricker, what do you think? I hate to say thumbs up or thumbs down for this documentary. I don't want to be cheeky about it, but do you recommend that our listeners check out The 13th on Netflix? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that you check it out. If you're trying to get a better sense of the background of the criminalization of Blacks and how that evolved in our country. And just it's a really good overview. It's got a lot of good voices, and it's got a lot about the criminal justice system that I thought I knew, but I didn't actually know the whole story. So it was very, very enlightening.
What about you, Toby Ball? Do you recommend our listeners check out The 13th on Netflix?
Yeah, it's really good. It's informative. It lays the case out pretty clearly. I'll also just make a plug. A lot of it's based on the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, who's one of the talking heads. And the deep dive we did, The New Jim Crow, and we had Marcia Chatelain and Shirley Lero and Madeline Barron were the guests. And, and especially Marcia and Shirley, I mean, this is their area of expertise. This is what they spend their time doing, and they're very smart. And they, added a lot to my understanding of these issues. And I did not do them any justice with anything I talked about tonight. But if you are on Patreon, definitely listen to what they have to say.
I would also recommend Marcia Chatelain's book, Franchise. It's a book about McDonald's sort of infiltration of the Black community, but it's also a book about protest. And it is so good. Check out Dr. Marcia Chatelain's book, Franchise. You will not regret it. It's so good. I have it on my Audible. It's great. Kevin Flynn, what about you? Should our listeners check out The 13th on Netflix? Yay or nay?
Yeah, thumbs up. Ava DuVernay is a very important director and documentarian. She did When They See Us, also from Netflix. I mean, there is a lot of stuff here that you know and you feel, but to have it placed out like this was really moving. So I think, and Netflix has, curated a list of Black Lives Matter related material. All of it is worthwhile. I think that this documentary probably didn't get the due it deserved when it first came out. Now's a good time to revisit it. Thumbs up.
I agree. I actually think you should sit with your family and watch it. It's a great, pretty, an hour and a half long, concise, beautifully made, beautifully packaged, difficult to watch in parts with some difficult imagery, but I think it's important to see that imagery in this case, and I wouldn't shield your kids from any of it. I think it's a really, really important watch, beautifully made, and will really recenter you in everything in the moment that's happening right now. If you have questions, if you want to learn how you can be a better ally, how you can talk about these issues in a smarter way, watch The 13th on Netflix. Big thumbs up from me. Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime of the week. Here's the buzz. Detectives in Washington State arrested a man who had stolen $200,000 worth of beehives. Authorities say Perry David Bays snatched unattended hives up and down the West Coast. After a tip, cops tried to catch him in a, quote, sting operation.
Oh, I see what you did there.
They accused Bays of operating, and we're not making this up, a honeybee chop shop. He's now facing felony charges. I guess he's cutting the hives up and starting new hives. Who knows? Yeah. Meantime, police are working to reunite the little buggers with their keepers. Panel, we're creating a new show.
Are these bees yours, Mr. Johnson?
Law and Order, Special Insect Unit. Laura Bricker, what crimes will Law and Order Special Insect Unit be investigating with their elite squad?
I'm sticking with the bees because there has literally been a bee mystery in my neighborhood for the last 2 weeks. My neighbor across the street, one of his swarms of bees escaped. So there's a swarm of bees going around Exeter right now. And so people will be like, we saw him here, we saw him there. And it has led to a lot of bee jokes. We have somebody saying, I'm sure someone will keep a bead on them.
Nice.
Be on the lookout.
Nice.
I hope they behave so nobody will get stung.
Nice.
If only they had followed the Bible, they wouldn't be giving you such beatitudes. Just out of reach. I almost saved them. It's unbelievable. So I'm going with the bees, and I'll report back.
Laura's town is full of dad jokes. That's all I got to say.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Toby Ball, if we're creating a new show, Law & Order Special Insect Unit, what crimes are we, this elite squad, investigating?
Episode 2 is Murder Hornets.
Kevin Flynn, what do you think?
Episode 3, white-collar crime involving wasps.
I mean, why is nobody thinking about what happened to Rebecca's pink and yellow moth? That is obviously what we're investigating on Law & Order Special Insect Unit. We should probably wrap it up on that. No, but before we do, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
Well, Rebecca, speaking of your moth, we have another moth that I would like to share.
All right.
Somebody named Me and Totoro,
long-time listener,
has sent us a elephant hawk moth in Scotland that is also very pretty colors like yours. And I was very enamored with this elephant hawk moth. And I would also like to send out a shout out, another of our longtime listeners, Jeff Brumley. His dog, Cinder, the Yorkie Poo, is going through some kidney and cancer issues, but has a pink camo bodysuit, and so that she doesn't obviously get at her stitches. So I hope that Cinder is doing better now, Jeff.
I love Jeff Brumley. I hope your dog is doing better too. Laura Bricker, folks want to reach out to you with their insects or cats or dogs or lizards or goats to be cat of the week. How can they find you on Twitter?
They can find me at Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, if Grover Norquist wants to reach out to you and say hi, how can he find you on Twitter?
I would welcome anything from him at Toby Ball NH.
You would not. You would not. Unless he retweets your UFO podcast. Let's be real.
He'd probably be into UFOs.
Kevin Flynn. Kevin Flynn, if folks want to reach out to you on Twitter, how can they find you?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page, by the way. Support the show at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, and you will get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and Laura Bricker's very charming Leave It to Bricker podcast, plus Kevin's 50th birthday celebration this Friday.
Gonna party!
Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with their permission. Our line editor is the very handsome Henry Lavoie. Our social media and newsletter maven is on maternity leave, but it doesn't mean we don't love her anyway, and her name is Meredith Plunkett. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where we are putting on funny glasses and singing Elton John songs in Russian accents. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Toby, we've noticed that your file,
the
file which is usually about 500 meg, is 2 gig.
Let me just hook up the other mic.
No, the mic is fine.
It isn't the mic at all.
No, Toby,
Did I not?
Don't change the mic. We just want to let you know your file size is huge.
Yes. I'm not compensating for anything.
You know what they say about a man with a big file size?
Takes a long time to upload.
Oh my
Big
God.
hands.
Oh my God.
Big hands.
Partners in Crime Media. Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.